Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. It's wonderful to see everybody here in person. And for those of you who couldn't make it, following along online, Chris was just mentioning that it's been a long time since we've been able to get so many of our core partners together in the same room for an event like this. And I sincerely appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us here for this season outlook announcement. It's a nicely sized venue here, and I'd like to offer a special thanks to the University of Hawaii for helping make this happen.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Manoa campus of the University of Hawaii. I'm the department chair of the Atmospheric Sciences Department, and we're responsible for essentially training the next generation of meteorologists and atmospheric scientists that will work for NOAA and for the National Weather Service. And we're honored to be here to support this event because we teach making our communities safe and protecting property. That's one of the main goals of our program, is to give our students the tools to be effective scientists to help keep you safe. And so we're really happy with this event. And I'll let John take it. Thank you.
First up, I would like to invite Kevin Kodama, Senior Service Hydrologist with the National Weather Service, for the wet season review and dry season outlook.
Thanks, Sean. Good morning, everybody. Just get right into it. So I'll start off with a summary of the wet season. It's October 2022 through April 2023 wet season. We started the wet season with at least severe to extreme drought in portions of all 4 counties. As you know or may not know, we just finished our 3rd consecutive year of La Nina, which affected the wet season during that time. Back in October, I don't know if you recall, the wet season forecast was for above average rainfall, especially from December through April. And I think overall it came to be. We had years above average rainfall at most locations. You can see it on a map. This is percent of average map for the whole state, and your greens, blues, and purples, that's where you have near to above average rainfall. And the yellows, oranges, and reds are below average, and not too much yellows, oranges, and reds. So, which is a bit different from what we've seen in previous years. But we started the wet season pretty slow. October and November was overall a bit below average. And then in December, we had some frontal systems come by, brought us some good amounts of rain. And then we had an anomaly there, like mid or late December through around mid-January, it's fairly dry. So that kind of threw things for a loop. But you know, it kind of set the stage for, hey, we're going to get this turnaround, and we ended up with pretty wet conditions from mid-January onward, all the way through through April, in fact. And even in May, we had out of season heavy rain events just pretty recently. So by mid-February, all the drought across the state was gone. It was we had enough rain, and conditions settled out in terms of a drought. In April, we had some dry conditions, but it was just localized dryness. Portions of Windward West Maui and the Hamakua coast had some moderate drought, but that's all been removed as well. So in terms of statistics, we ended up with a top 10 wettest wet season in the last 30 years. It was overall the 9th wettest. Some highlights from specific locations are Hawaiʻi, overall above average rainfall during the wet season. The Tu'e Airport actually had its 8th wettest wet season in the last 30 years. Oahu was near average, so it's pretty much across the island, pretty close to average. Maui County, near to above average. Molokai Airport is notable. It actually had its 2nd wettest wet season. And on the Big Island, the windward side had near average totals. But on the Kona side and portions of the Northwest, the rest of the island pretty much had wetter than average conditions. So what are we looking at in terms of the dry season, which is now May through September? Probabilities strongly favor El Nino development during the summer, and then that El Nino is expected to persist into next year. And the Climate Prediction Center is forecasting actually below average rainfall for the dry season. Note that it's a bit different because normally during the onset of an El Nino, you're expecting our dry season to have above average rainfall, but this year's different. And it's not unprecedented. It's happened before, most recently back in 2009, where we ended up with actually the ninth driest dry season in 30 years, even though that was the onset summer for an El Nino. So what we're looking at is drought to develop at some point during the summer and then progressively get worse throughout the summer, so that by the end of the dry season, fully expecting we're going to have some areas with severe and possibly extreme drought again, especially in the leeward areas of the Big Island and Maui County. Unfortunately, what that also means with El Nino in place is that dryness, that drought is probably going to extend through the wet season, the next wet season, and into the next dry season. So if 2009, 2010 is an analog, that was one of our worst droughts that we've had in the last 30, 50 years. So not looking good in terms of rainfall. So this greenness that you see outside right now, hope you enjoyed it. Take that one last look and watch it fade away over the next few months. Impacts, that's probably going to be it's going to be worse for the non-irrigated agricultural community. So your livestock, your ranch lands, forage, that's going to be impacted the most and also the fastest. And also water systems dependent on stream water diversions, especially, for instance, upcountry Maui, West Maui, those areas depend a lot on stream diversions. And then residents that rely on water catchment systems. A lot of those in the Puna district, for instance, on the Big Island, they're going to be impacted. You know, you have any significant amount of dryness, lack of rain, or even reduced amount of below normal rainfall, and they're going to have shortages. From the wildfire perspective, we're looking at because of the wet conditions that we had during this wet season. We're looking for a bit of a later start to the fire season, but that's going to rapidly build in as the summer dryness occurs. So instead of the normal late July to early August timeframe for what we call red flag threshold, it might be a bit later than that, but still we're expecting, you know, say a wildfire season with all of the fuels that we have that were built up during this wet season. So that's all I have in the handouts that you'll be getting later. In the packets, there's going to be links to these maps if you're interested, and also some links to the Climate Outlook, Climate Prediction Center. And thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. And I'll take this opportunity to say, don't let me forget to let you leave here without picking up some of those folders. We have some folders with write-ups of the outlook that Kevin just covered and the outlook that Chris will be talking about as well, plus some additional preparedness information. So be sure to grab those on the way out. And with that, I'd like to invite Governor Green up to say a few minutes.
Aloha. Just a few words, and we're going to do a really quick proclamation. First of all, thank you everyone for bringing science to this discipline. I appreciate that to no end. This is a very serious topic. The ability to predict storms based on probabilities, the ability to prepare for them in advance is invaluable. We know that because we're seeing it play out right now in our dear neighbor and essentially family member of the Pacific Guam. We saw footage from their storm right now, category 4/5 storm. Described better by the professionals, but when you see cars rolling, when you see pieces of concrete fly off of buildings, you know there's potential loss of life. You know that it is a very serious thing. I was speaking to the governor of Guam yesterday, and she was standing in several inches of water in her governor's residence. So it affects all. It's something that's very serious, and so I wanted to share that. Whether we ultimately predict 3 storms or 5 storms, we'll be ready. We'll be ready to pick up great teams. But it only takes one storm, as John was sharing with me right before we opened up our session today. One serious storm that hits head on can do incredible damage. So please be ready. What we will do as an administration is what we've always done, which is rely on our professionals across the state. We'll prepare in advance, make sure that we communicate clearly at least 3 days in advance so people can prepare. And it's my job to just say a couple of quick things. Please do take these recommendations to heart. Please, now that we're in the season, have 14 days of water, have food available for you, know where you will go if there is a storm and you're asked to go and shelter in a safe place. These are very important things. Know where your medicine is. Know that you have enough medication in case we end up getting cut off from our pharmacies. Know that you can communicate with your loved ones, but not completely as you always do. Know that there will be some need to have contingency plans. So all these things are very important. And I would just add 1 or 2 more points. Right now, the effect of what we've gone through, which is the COVID pandemic, what it did was for our healthcare system and many of our other professions, we're short on some professionals now. And though we sometimes have enough beds, we might not have enough professionals, nurses, doctors, other lab techs. It's not guaranteed that we're going to have all of those services at all times. So it's even more important that we practice good prevention. Because right now our hospitals are pretty full. And God forbid we had many individuals get hurt or have consequences from not being able to take care of themselves. So we can't afford that. So I'm going to appeal to our better angels and say, this year, really get prepared. Get super prepared before the storms come. We will do what's necessary professionally to keep people safe, but we need that extra support from individuals to be ready. So again, thank you so much. And I'm just going to, if I may, call up the emergency management professionals so I can declare this hurricane preparedness week. A couple of people, I'm going to have people come up. Yes. So I'll read this as they come. Whereas hurricanes are among nature's most powerful and destructive phenomenon, setting aside the Hawaii State Senate. Just kidding. See, no one's even listening. Whereas the destructive winds, heavy rains, dimming surf inland and coastal flooding, lightning and tornadoes can accompany these storms. And hurricane season runs traditionally from June 1st to November 30th. But as we just heard, there is variability. So we are prepared. Hurricane Lane, which approached us in 2018, brought record-setting rainfall, over $8 million in damages. But recall Hurricane Amiki, which struck Hawaii on 9/11/1992 and led to 6 deaths, 100 injuries, and $3 billion of damage. It takes only one storm to affect our lives. So before hurricane season begins, the state of Hawaii encourages all of us to learn about their vulnerability to these storms, develop an emergency plan, have 2 weeks of emergency supplies to ensure your safety and those that you love. So this is Hurricane Preparedness Week, and thank you all for paying attention and listening to these great professionals.
As we get resituated with the audience, I'd like to invite our special preparative speaker up here, Laura K. Rand from Hawaii Foodbank.
Hey everyone, aloha and good morning. My name is Laura Kubran. I am the Vice President, Chief Impact Officer for Hawaii Foodbank. And you may think like, Hawaii Foodbank, preparedness special speaker? But I want to tell you what preparedness really means and why it's a community responsibility just as much as it's an individual responsibility. It's going to give it 14 days, that is paycheck to paycheck. So 2 weeks of groceries, and I gotta buy it in advance, my whole family, it seems overwhelming. And if you imagine 14 days of food for your whole family stacked up in your house, that's a lot. And it can seem like, you know what, I'm sure it'll be okay. It's been okay every year. This year it might not be. And if you can, please do. Get that 14 days, prep up your medications, as the governor said. Sometimes that can be difficult. I absolutely agree. And I will tell you, as soon as I can refill, I refill. It helps me buffer and buffer a little bit at a time, and it's possible. Now think that same way about food. We think about food that same way. When times are tough, we know that at the food bank, we're still serving 1 in 6 adults. And that is up since the pandemic. It has not receded to pre-pandemic levels. We know there are people still struggling economically. So if you are struggling economically, my challenge is this. Can you look for the sales, look for what you already buy, because when you see sales on what you already buy, you get really excited. Buy one extra amount. Every single time you go to the store, if your kids love chicken noodle soup, get some extra chicken noodle soup. If you think, well, I need to have the kind of stuff, those special things that you needed for disaster, you are less likely to prepare. And I absolutely encourage you to fully prepare. Over the years, Maui Food Bank, the Food Basket, Hawaii Food Bank on Oahu and Kauai, we've developed a strong reputation for jumping in and helping whenever we can. But we can only do so much. We would like to stand together as a whole community. We're partners with you. And if you can do a little bit more, please prepare a little bit more. I have some relatives that don't prepare, and I prepare a little bit more knowing they're going to need some help during that time. And I'm going to challenge, if you can do more, do more. Your neighbor might be housebound and may need some help during that time. Somebody else may be economically strapped. They blew a tire last week, and your extra preparation can help. We know Hawaii is a strong, cohesive community, and it will take a strong, cohesive community because it's going to take a little longer for relief and help, assistance, backup, recovery, because we're a remote island in the Pacific. It's going to take, it may take all that 14 days. And if you need help, if you are struggling and if I build an emergency kit, I'm going to eat it next week because PD is not till Friday, then I would ask that you talk to your friends and your family and your neighbor, and you ask them if they can help you to stock up. Can they help you to move forward? Food banks, we will all stand in the gap. We will help every way that we can to do that. I have one extra little challenge. And if you still have residuals from last year's hurricane preparedness, and you're thinking, you know what, I'm good, I'm gonna go on vacation instead, I would challenge you, would you be interested in donating that to your local food banks so we can help other folks to do that and prepare again this year? At Hawaii Food Bank, Maui Food Bank, Food Basket, the other thing that we're doing to help is we know that some folks, 14 days, it's beyond. Every day is an emergency when it comes to food. So we're sending out this week, it is Hurricane Preparedness Week, and we are sending out extra boxes of food to the people that we serve and suggesting that they hold on to those for the next 6 months. And if they don't need them, then that's groceries they don't need to buy in December. And I ask that you help us to do that. The other thing is sometimes it's really humbling to admit that you need food. If you, your family, your neighbors, your cousin's best friend's sister, you know how we are in Hawaii. You know of somebody that needs help, please reach out to your local food banks. We are here not only during disasters, but every single day. And we want to stand in the gap to everyone else. And mostly we just say thank you for the outpouring of support during every disaster, during every Kona low, during every hurricane, during every global pandemic. Like, thank you for the outpouring of generosity and support. Together, we can all keep Hawaii strong.
Thank you. And next up, I'd like to invite Chris Brenchley, Director of the Central Pacific Hurricane Center.
everyone. Aloha. To have you here. I do echo and appreciate the message that we've heard this morning from the governor, as well as Laura from the Foodbank. Thank you so much for those messages. And I also want to take a brief second to thank our whole team at the National Weather Service, from the forecasters to the support technicians. There is a big effort there behind what you see presented by the way of forecasts and warnings and watches. So I wanted to acknowledge the hard work of that team that's working 24/7, even supporting here in Honolulu, supporting the forecast operations in Guam as they recover from the typhoon there. Also wanted to take the time to also thank you. It's not often that we have our emergency management partners all in the same room, especially since the pandemic. And I wanted to have them here and thank them in person for the great partnership that we have and continue to build. It really does take that partnership to be able to build and strengthen the weather-ready nation. And that's one of our goals here at NOAA's National Weather Service. Also wanted to give a mahalo to the media partners that helped get the message out to the people whenever severe weather strikes, and we appreciate them. The seasonal hurricane outlook is developed by our NOAA's Climate Prediction Center. This is a team of scientists, climate scientists that are dedicated to really figuring out how we can better predict climatological patterns. These are long-term climatological patterns that we see across the globe. And the impacts of these on our everyday weather and our seasonal weather here in the Pacific. So together with this team, each year we collaboratively put together a forecast, a seasonal outlook for our Central Pacific Basin. That's the area around Hawai'i, but also from the dateline over to 140 west. So kind of a bigger area in the middle of the Pacific. So a lot of times what we'll look at is, we'll talk about last season as well. So the last several seasons have been very quiet across the Central Pacific. We haven't seen a whole lot of tropical cyclone activity. Last year we had one, and that came across from the Eastern Pacific as a hurricane. You remember it went south of the Big Island and was rapidly dissipating. So it didn't really affect the islands directly. And that was really the only activity that we had in 2022. If we look at the past several seasons, you can see that it's been really quiet for quite a few years. So I think this quietness that we've had in our patterns over the past few years may have kind of lulled us into a sense of complacency, possibly. And we use that information to predict how the trend might be impacted for the next season. So the information that we look at a lot is the ENSO, commonly known as El Nino or La Nina, the condition of the waters across the tropical equatorial Pacific. And what we're looking at, as has been already explained and pretty widely talked about already, is that we're looking at El Nino conditions developing across the Pacific this season, this hurricane season. You can see that it's already getting warmer across the equator, and that condition is expected to continue. We see a lot of consensus in the modeling that show us pretty rapidly heading towards El Nino conditions. So typically El Nino conditions are correlated with a higher than average tropical cyclone activity in the Central Pacific. And this is a big factor in our season outlook for 2023. So if we look at the outlook numbers, we announced that this season we expect near to above normal tropical cyclone activity across the Central Pacific. We do expect, the outlook is for 4 to 7 tropical cyclones. That includes tropical depressions, tropical storms, and hurricanes across the Central Pacific area at large. We do not predict in that outlook how many systems will directly impact the state of Hawaii, the islands. So this is a larger scale prediction. As we've been reminded in seasons past, and also graphically recently with the typhoon in Guam, is that it only takes impact from one. And so with an increase in activity in the basin, there's obviously going to be potential for more threats to land. We just want to emphasize that as we've had lack of activity with last season, the last several seasons, that may have rolled us to let our guards down. But it's very important that as we see an upswing in activity expected this season, that it's more important than ever to view your emergency plan and the emergency kit, and to make sure that you are prepared, that you know where to get the information, the official information, that you heed your local and public safety officials as the information comes down. Together, we can make all of our communities more resilient and more prepared this hurricane season through each of our actions and as a country. And that is all I have. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks everyone. That wraps up the formalized portion of this announcement. We will be around, Chris, Kevin, myself, and many of our forecasters as well, scattered throughout the audience. In case there's any follow-up questions that you're interested in, we also obviously have a lot of the emergency management community here that we would like to encourage some interactions there as well. So with that, I'll say thank you for joining us and have a good morning.